That took a minute, but now we're talking. It took a minute. Good. Hello everyone. For today's video, I thought I'd do something a little different. I want to take you kind of behind the scenes and show you what it takes to find new fishing spots. I've never been here before. I got my ice picks just in case things don't go real well, if you know what I mean. I did check out the ice before on foot before I went back to the truck to get my sled and drag it down this path, just to make sure I could access the ice and use my spud bar to make sure I could get out on the ice, etc., etc. There's my sled. In general, at least where I am, it takes me about 4 ponds or lakes or spots to find one good one. And so for me, it's mostly about putting in the time. And some of the very best spots are kind of off the beaten path. I mean, this one, the access is pretty easy. You just drag the sled down this trail here, and I'm going to have to carry it over some of these rocks and stumps and other things here. But this is pretty easy. You know, I only have to carry it maybe 50 feet total. Some other places I fish, it's a lot harder to get into, and that keeps the fishing pretty good. You know, in general, the harder you have to work, the better the fishing. So I don't mind putting in a little work. Now, this particular spot is a setback off a river, and we've had some cold weather, and a lot of these spots, you know, they just haven't been safe in the past couple of years. We've had kind of mild winters where I am in New England. This is New Hampshire, by the way. Actually, I'm on the Mass line here, but doesn't matter. We've had kind of mild winters in New England the past few years. See that? I just hit dirt. So I don't know even how much water there is in this setback. I can see there's animal tracks all over the ice back here. I can tell I've got about 6 inches of ice, which pretty much checks out. I hit dirt again, though. You know, just punching through the ice, I'm hitting dirt. I'm trying to access the deepest water I can get without getting into the main river current and channel. You got to be super careful on river ice. You know, if you go in and there's current, it can kind of pull you down under the ice. So yeah, I don't mess around with river ice. But this is a setback off the river, and so there's no current in here. I mean, there could be just a little tiny bit of flow, but basically there's no current. So I feel pretty safe in here, especially since I keep bottoming out the auger. I'm only in about 1 foot or 2 of water, so even if I were to go through here, it would just get my boots muddy, basically. And so number one is access, being able to reach the spot you want to fish that you find on a map. And number 2 is making sure it has enough ice and it's fishable. Number 3 for me is figuring out if I have enough water to jig. Now, I might have enough water in here to put like a big shiner underneath the trap just below the ice and try for pike or something like that. There, I hit dirt again. But I don't really have enough water in here to jig. And so for me, that's a problem. You know, I want to jig. I don't want to sit there and look at traps all day long. So I am not going to stick around here very long. And I'm going to just cross this off the list and just accept that it takes me 4 new tries at a new spot before I find one good one. And that's just the odds that I've found over the years. In different parts of New England, the odds are a little better. Like when I'm fishing in Maine, I feel like I can do a little bit better. If I'm fishing on Cape Cod, I feel like I can do a little bit better. You know, maybe it's just 1 and 2 instead of 1 and 4. Anyway, I'm going to put the camera down and just double check that it's really shallow water and I don't want to fish here. I'm basically touching the bottom right now with my skimmer, my ice skimmer. So I know it's really shallow. So the first spot didn't work out, but that's okay. I've got a backup plan. And that's kind of the way I like to do it. If I strike out at the first spot, I got another plan B to salvage the day. You know, I can see in the clouds there's a storm coming in, and I know for a fact it was freezing rain on me a little bit later. But if you didn't feel like fishing during these conditions, this would be a good time to keep going and checking out more new spots to fish. And depending on where you live, it might be, 1 in 2, 1 in 4, 1 in 10 places you need to check out. And it's just kind of putting in the time and especially focusing on those places that are kind of off the beaten path or where the access is a little bit more difficult. I tend to do the best at those places. The access here is pretty easy. It gets fished a lot. I'm following somebody else's tracks out onto the ice. I can tell that the ice is pretty solid just the way it feels. I can see old holes. Looks like there's about 7 inches of ice, and when I started drilling there was 7-8 inches of ice. And I'm staying away from pressure cracks. I saw some people skating on the ice, on ice that looked a lot thinner than the snowy ice, or the ice with the snow on top. So I'm feeling reasonably confident. Plus it's been super cold, and I know all the other ponds in this area have 6 inches plus of ice on them. So let's go. Let's start drilling holes. This Milwaukee drill and the ice auger adapter in the lower half of a laser hand auger just flies through the ice. It's amazing to me. I remember drilling holes with this hand auger that was it was blue, and it was the basic idea was it was like a sharpened spoon. One half of the spoon was sharpened, and man, cutting ice holes with that thing, I mean, it was a workout. You might be there cranking on this thing like you're at the gym for 20 minutes before you get a hole in the ice. And so having a drill like this, you see the kickback? That's the one thing with these older drills is you got to be careful the kickback, especially at the bottom of the hole. It seems to grab where the water layer meets that first bit of ice. Tends to grab there, and if you're not expecting it, you can really torque your wrist. The new ones have anti-kickback feature or anti-reverse feature. I'm kind of used to it, so I know it's coming, and I don't let it torque my wrist. But if you're new to ice fishing or you've never used a drill auger combo like this, that's something you need to watch out for, because that kickback can really mess up your wrist. Alright, I got my holes drilled, and I'm going to get set up to fish them now. I've got a 1/4 ounce leech flutter spoon in the perch color. It's basically a gold spoon with some green on it, a little bit of red highlights. And I've been doing well on this spoon, so I figure what the heck, I'll just stick with it. And I've got about an inch piece of real trout worm to tip that hook with. I take the treble off and put a single hook on. That just makes life easier all around. It's easier to bait that hook too, the single hook versus a treble. And I'm just going to start at the beginning and work my way down a series of holes. Oh yeah, I keep the drag loose when it's in the rod case. Otherwise you can break off tips if that reel handle starts twisting inside the case. So I just loosen up my drag whenever I put the rod in the case and then tighten it back up. Now I'm fishing blind on this trip. I don't have a sonar, flasher, or underwater camera going. It's just a hole in the ice and a 1/4 ounce spoon tipped with a piece of worm. Not everybody has electronics. I will say they do help. I've gotten to the point now where I really like fishing with an underwater camera, and I don't enjoy fishing with sonar. He's only a little guy, but we'll get a little bit better than that. I don't enjoy dragging a sonar all over the place. For really deep water, like if you're going for Lakers or something like that, yeah, definitely bring the sonar. It helps a lot. But for perch fishing, other panfish, I don't feel like I need to bring it on every trip. The water here tends to be a little bit dirtier. Plus we got some, I know it's hard to see, but we got some freezing rain coming in, and I don't feel like getting all my gear soaking wet. Now this isn't the size class of perch that I'm after, and I can feel a few little ones pecking at the spoon, or actually they're probably pecking at the worm. And I'm trying to call more fish in. And it's working, but the size isn't getting much better. But that's okay. I really just started fishing, and so any fish, any kind of feedback at all is some good feedback. But if you're around perch like that, there's kind of two strategies. You can just keep fishing the school and hopefully the big ones move in, or the little ones stop beating the big ones to the bait. Or if you think, this is just hopeless, I'm surrounded by small perch and it's never going to get better, you can move. And what I do, especially when there's a little bit of snow on the ice like this, is that I'll mark the hole. I'll put an X next to the hole. So anybody that's fishing with me after I leave, you know exactly where I caught the fish, because I'll put an X in the hole, next to the hole, I mean, in the snow. I just missed one there. Oh, that's a little one, a real small one. And then some other holes that you kind of questionable, I'll put a question mark in the snow next to the ice. Now it seems ridiculous, it seems kind of silly, but after you drill, a dozen, 2 dozen holes, sometimes it can get confusing on which exactly was the good hole. So X marks the spot where I've caught fish, and a question mark is where I get bites or I miss a fish and I'm not really sure, was that a decent fish or those are just more small fish. And I can go back through if I want to, if I feel like it, with like a tiny tungsten jig or a smaller spoon, or just different bait or something different, just to show them something else and see if I can pull a better fish out of that hole. So I'm going to get another rod rigged up with a smaller spoon. The 1/4 ounce spoon is kind of a big spoon, and in good conditions they'll go for it. And I've caught a couple fish on it already, but I feel like I'm missing more fish than I ought to. So I'm going to try a smaller spoon, and that is a 1/10 ounce chartreuse Swedish pimple. And I have a single hook on that too. I'm going to tip it with a piece of worm. You can use a lot of different things for bait to tip the spoons with. Some old timers I used to fish with, they would use perch eyes, and those work great. You can use pieces of old shiners from guys fishing tip-ups. They leave the dead shiners in the holes. You cut those up and use them for bait. I've even used squid from the grocery store, cut it up into little strips, very small strips, like you might fish in the saltwater, just a lot smaller, like really tiny. And you put them on wax paper and you put them in the freezer, and a single strip of squid will last you, I don't know, so many fish. They're even more durable than the worms. So this is a hole that I put a question mark next to. I'm going back with the skimmer and the smaller spoon here. And I think I caught some more small fish, but it really wasn't what I was looking for. So this is a different hole with a question mark, and I was able to pull a little perch out of this one. And that's what was messing with the bigger spoon. And that's not really what I'm after here. Back down the hole he goes. Alright, when in doubt, drill another line of holes. An even better way of doing that is to look at Google Maps or Google Satellite View and depth charts. Find some spots on the map you want to fish. You can save spots, save waypoints in Google Maps, and then go directly there when you're out on the ice. But I'm kind of pretending like I didn't do any of that, and I just drilled a line, a series of holes in the ice. And I'm going back to the beginning and starting there, and I'll just fish them one after another until I run into some fish. And then once you do run into fish that you want, the good fish, the quality fish that you're after, then I'll drill a few holes around wherever I intersected that school of fish. Took me a couple holes to find some more fish. I'm back with the 1/4 ounce spoon trying to call in fish. If I'm not in and around a bunch of fish, I like a bigger profile to kind of call the fish in. It's kind of the same principle as open water fishing. A lot of people use the term drawing power, but it's almost like a duck call to me. I'm literally trying to call the fish to me and see if I can convince them to come in and take a look, and then I slow down and see if I can get them to eat the spoon. Here's another look at that 1/4 ounce spoon. Doesn't look too much like a perch to me, but the fish seem to like it, whatever color you want to call it. Took me longer than I expected to run into some bigger perch, but eventually I did. I don't know if the weather had them a little fussy, but this is probably the best perch of the day. Back down she goes. And it was funny, right after this fish, I caught the male, and it was almost like they were paired up. Sometimes I run into them in schools, and they could be 20, 30 fish in a school. If you have electronics, it looks like a shed just came underneath the ice. Sometimes the schools are that thick and with that many fish. But in this case, I was only getting them, you know, 1 or 2 out of a hole, and then the hole would go dead and I'd have to keep moving on. With electronics, you might be able to do a little better. Maybe you get 3 or 4 out of a hole. I was trying to stay on the move and pick off the active fish from each hole. You know, with electronics, you might have been able to stick with one hole and maybe pull out a few more fish. You could see them coming in. Sometimes they come in a little slow. They're a little finicky. You could downsize. You could bring the spoon up to their level, although it's usually better if you make them chase. But anyway, I really wasn't able to find a school, and it was just, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 out of each hole that I found fish in, and then it was on to the next hole, on to the next hole. I think by now the freezing rain had picked up a little bit more, and it was just me and an eagle that was watching me fish left on the ice. Everybody else had packed up and left once the freezing rain started coming down a little bit harder. That's not a bad one. I don't think he's as big as the first female I ended up with, but he's better than the fish I started with. Come on now, go back down your hole. I'm going to take a picture of him. There he is. I got a quick picture before I sent him back down the hole. I figured since he was just laying there, I'd take a picture. He's got the tiger stripes, orange fins. I think they're kind of handsome fish. Anyway, after that fish, I had to drill more holes. Whenever I run out of fish, I tend to just drill more holes. And I was trying to cover different depth ranges and different areas too. So I actually covered a lot of this pond. And I don't know, the fish seemed to be a little bit in a funk. And I think it was due to the weather. You know, so I was only getting maybe 1, 2 fish out of a good hole. A lot of holes I wasn't getting any fish out of. And then I drill a bunch of holes in a line and then go back to the beginning, fish the line, and then start and drill another line. And yeah, just keep on going like that. At a certain point, the freezing rain got to be too much. Not too much to fish in. I don't mind fishing in freezing rain. Although I'd rather fish in snow, to be honest. 39 degrees and freezing rain or rain just gets all your clothing wet or your gloves wet. But I've got plenty of gear, so I don't really mind too much. But everybody else did clear out, other than me and my friend the eagle. But at a certain point, I just can't film anymore. The way I have the camera rigged up is not 100% waterproof, so I had to turn the camera off once the rain started coming down hard. I did catch another pickerel and some more perch. I took a picture of the pickerel. There he is, nice chain pickerel. You can see the chain marking on the side. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Packing up all my gear here, and I'll list all the gear in the video description just like every other video. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!